The Packers get great news on defense. What am I talking about? I'm going to cover what I'm talking about in this video. If you'd like the content, be sure to hit that subscribe button. That being said, last week we started talking free agency for the Packers. Who's on the books, who's not on the books, who should we restructure heading into 2024? Also, just scratching the surface on this upcoming year's draft. Last week we talked offense. This week we're going to talk defense. Let's jump into it. When we start talking defense and we start looking at the D line for the Packers, who's on the books for them? Kenny Clark under contract, TJ Slayton under contract, Devontae Wyatt under contract, Kobe Wooden, Carl Brooks, Jonathan Ford. Okay, so when we just mentioned the name Kenny Clark there, Kenny Clark obviously showing his leadership. We're going to talk about him a little bit further in depth, but TJ Slayton showed himself to be very reliable when he was out there. TJ Slayton impressed me probably the most when we start talking, just D linemen last season. I thought TJ Slayton stepped up big time. Devontae Wyatt showed a little bit why the Packers selected him as early as they did out of Georgia. I expect to see bigger things out of him, this upcoming year. But, we got Devontae Wyatt's contract, Kobe Wooden's contract, Carl Brooks' contract, which are very small contracts, rookie contracts. Kobe Wooden looked super good. Carl Brooks looked super good. And then we got obviously Jonathan Ford there. But when we were talking free agents for the Packers, there are none. Okay. So that is one of the very good things heading into 2024. That is some of the great news for the Green Bay Packers on defense is that as free agents heading into 2024, they don't have any by that position. And when we look ahead into the 2024 draft, the Packers really don't need anything when we start talking D line. Leave your comments. Let me know what you think. Do you think otherwise? Do you disagree with me there? I think the Packers are pretty much set as far as D line goes, unless Jeff Hafley has, a different formation that he wants to run. Obviously, he's going to be running a 4-3, but unless he's got different personnel guys, just based off of what he's going to run, we know that he likes to cause a lot of disruption and chaos at the line of scrimmage. That being said, I think that is going to help out our run immensely. I think these guys are all very capable of stopping the run, but I'm super curious, what Jeff Hafley's defense is going to look like. Again, especially when we start talking, defensive line guys and personnel. I think the Packers are completely set. That is such great news for the Packers, is that they really don't need to look to the draft. I'm going to give you one guy though that I think that the Packers could be looking at in the draft, should he slip to them as late as he does. But before I do that, let's talk Kenny Clark a second. Kenny Clark has the second highest cap on this team at $27.5 million. He's certainly earned it. He has, just year after year, he's reliable. Not only is he out on the football field, which is big, especially looking at this past season when the Packers had so many injuries, especially to their, quote unquote veterans on that team. But as he enters into 2024, the final year of his second contract with the Packers, are they going to maybe consider giving him a third non-quarterback contract extension? Usually you see those, third-year extension, third-time extensions only playing out at the quarterback position. Do they do that with Kenny Clark to significantly reduce his cap hit this season? And if not, they could restructure his deal and gain about 10.5 million to 11.5 million in cap space if they restructure. That is something that the Packers are going to really have to look at doing this offseason just to save some money there. But defensive line, guys, I think we are set. I think we are stout. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you guys think as far as, the D line goes. Then let's talk about edge rushers, and let's get into that a second. Who are on the books for the Packers when we start talking edge rushers? Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith under contract, Lucas Van Ness, Kingsley Egnigbari, Brenton Cox Jr., Keyshawn Banks, Aaron Mosby. You got Kenneth, you got Deslin Alexander, and then you got DeAndre. Okay, so that being said, free agents for the Packers, there are none at the edge rusher position, which is super great news for the Packers. Again, really good news for the Packers when we start talking D-line and then edge rushers for the Packers. They don't have any concerns, any worries there, except, again, just like we talked about with maybe, Kenny Clark at D end, on the D line. maybe maybe the Packers have to take a look at some restructures. Maybe that's to Rashawn Gary's contract. And yes, they did just extend him out. So maybe they can restructure that a little bit, or even talking Preston Smith. Okay. So getting into that, the Packers, outside linebackers hold the fifth and sixth highest contracts on the rosters heading into 2024. So between the edge rushers and Kenny Clark, that is the top, that's three of the top six contract hits, biggest contracts for the Packers as far as cap space goes. With when we're talking Preston Smith, Rashawn Gary. Sean Gary has a 15.9 million cap hit in his second year under his new contract with the Packers that they could restructure. I know they did just sign him before that $6.2 million cash bonus is paid out in March to free up around $5 million in cap space. Preston Smith, he's a wild card at 32 years old and making $16.5 million in cap hit, but has been a very reliable and consistent pass rusher for the Packers. He's one that hasn't seen injury time. And that is, of course, we know, talking about that when it comes to Kenny Clark and Preston Smith, having guys just being reliable, being able to get out on the football field has just been so huge for this Packers defense, especially when we were just talking defensively across the board. Devondre Campbell missed a significant amount of time. Jair missed a significant amount of time. They had a lot of injuries. But Preston Smith was one of those guys that was out on the football field. He has only missed one game over in his 9-year NFL career. That is just unheard of. And is that worth paying him out for? Or should the Packers cut ties with him? So he has a $5.4 million roster bonus due in March, and the Packers will decide his fate before this is paid. They can release or trade him to create $2.5 million in cap space. I think they hold on to him. I really honestly think they need to keep Preston Smith for at least one more season and then see what Lucas Van Ness has. Lucas Van Ness obviously doing so much. Lucas Van Ness only he had 15 of his 22 pressures come in his last 9 games. So he showed significant growth. Of course, a rookie, he's going to look pretty raw at the beginning of the season. Lucas Van Ness really came into his own later on as the season progressed. So I say keep Preston Smith's contract where it's at. And then you see what you got in Lucas Van Ness, and then see where we're going to be at with Preston Smith. Should we, restructure a deal, sign him this, extend out his contract there. But only JJ Egnegbarri ranked in the top half of the league in pass rush win rate. Okay, so we know that we're going to be without JJ Egnegbarri due to his injury in the Dallas game, which means they're going to have to heavily rely on Lucas Van Ness. Okay, so getting back to the D line. Okay, so I want to take a look at one guy that I feel in the draft. So if the Packers, if this guy falls to the Packers, say second round with their second pick in the second round, maybe not even the first pick, but the second pick in the second round, Chris Jenkins out of Michigan. If he falls to the Packers, say he slips in the draft in the second round, I say the Packers maybe, even though they don't need to positionally address that, go after somebody on the D line. Maybe that would be one guy that they look at doing that with. He contributed 40 tackles, 19 tackles for loss in college over his 4-year span, 15 sacks, 5 pass breakups, 3 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery for a touchdown as a senior. But I think that would be maybe one of those guys when I'm talking Chris Jenkins, maybe that they look at in the draft. Leave your comments. Let me know what you think. Should they be looking at Chris Jenkins or somebody else? Who would be that guy in the second round for you that the Packers, just say, hey, he's the best man on the board. Let's just draft him, even though positionally they really don't need to address that. Who's that guy for you guys? Leave your comments. Let me know. Go Pack.